This is about the Biden administration expected to extend the payment pause for student loan borrowers through August, and
Yeah, well, it
Colin
was
got this.
confirmed. Yeah, it's confirmed as well. There were murmurs that Biden was going to announce formally today that
Mm,
it's going to be extended, and it has. So shout
okay.
out to Indy's daughter for showing exactly how I felt yesterday when I found out about this. There we go.
That's what it is.
Yeah, kicking the can down the road for the
Yep.
third time now,
Yep. Third time.
third or fourth. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
um, so I don't mind reading the article. Oh, there you
Sorry.
go.
Go ahead.
I don't mind reading this, Reef,
Okay.
just to give you a break
I got you.
from last week.
No worries.
So the Biden administration plans to announce another extension to the payment pause for the federal student loan borrowers, sources tell CNBC. The pause is likely to last through August, so it's confirmed it will. This will be the sixth extension of the break, which has now spanned 2 presidencies.
Hmm.
Currently, the pandemic era relief policy suspended student loan bills is scheduled to lapse in May. Former President Donald Trump first announced a stay on bills for the millions of Americans with education debt in March 2020, when the coronavirus pandemic brought the US economy to its knees and joblessness soared.
Hmm.
Nearly all borrowers eligible for the pause have used it, with just around 1% of them to continue to pay, according to analysis by higher education expert Mark Kranowitz. The country has emerged from the darkest days of the pandemic, and the unemployment rate has come back down. Yet the Biden administration has expressed reluctance to resume the payments before it makes a decision on student loan forgiveness. The president is going to look at what we should do on student debt before the pause expires, or he'll extend the pause, White House Chief of Staff Ron Klain said last month on the podcast Pod Save America. Joe Biden right now is the only president in history when no one's paid on their student loans for the entirety of his presidency, Klain said. Democrats and advocates have warned that resuming the payments after more than 2 years could have signaled to some that Biden was turning away from his vow to forgive at least 10,000 in student debt for all, leading to damaged headlines and lower turnout at the polls come November. President Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and Senator Elizabeth Warren are pushing the president to cancel closer to 50,000 per borrower. Nearly 66% of likely voters are in support of the president favoring student debt, with more than 70% of Latino and Black voters in favor, a recent poll found.
Hmm.
Even prior to the public health crisis, student loans were a major challenge for many households. Outside of education, it exceeds 1.7 trillion, burdening families more than auto or credit card debt. Some 40 million people in the US have loans from their schooling, and more than a quarter are just past due. Yet Scott Buchanan, executive director of the Student Loan Servicing Alliance, a trade group for federal student loan services, warned that the repeated extensions will cause their own issues for the lending system. What's a borrower to believe or plan for anymore when the government keeps changing its mind, Buchanan said. When the inevitable resumption does finally happen, millions of borrowers will likely miss it and go delinquent because of the false expectations the government is now setting. So in response to that, AOC, who I normally have some things to say to her, actually brought up a good point yesterday on Twitter. And she tweeted, I think some folks read these extensions as savvy politics, but I don't think those folks understand the panic and disorder it causes people to get so close to these deadlines just to extend the uncertainty. It doesn't have the effect people think it does. We should cancel them.
Yep.
I think there's
Next
another
one.
slide.
Yep.
Yeah. I've had so many people asking me, my payments are X $100,000 a month. What do you think is going to happen in May? I need to make sure I delay X medical procedure or prescription / sell my car / make X huge change to prepare. The limbo and uncertainty is also a strain. So yeah, I mean, we knew he was going to do this. we expected he was going to do. At least I expected him to do this. I just think it's kind of funny, and I tweeted this out yesterday, that considering how Biden and a lot of the Democrats are kind of saying, oh, the economy is doing well, people are getting jobs, that they decided to continue to extend the student loan payments, which,
Yeah.
I mean, I just feel like they're just kind of stuck at this point, because, you know, I'm sure that they realize that it's going to get a lot of backlash, you know, from millennials and Gen Z in particular. But I think it's just kind of ironic to say that the economy is doing well, that they continue to extend these payments. So, I mean, you know, and I'm also just kind of like, you know, you could just easily cancel it. You know,
Yeah.
or if you're willing to if you're worried about midterms, at least kind of prolong it to at least the end of the year.
Well, and both of you were on Lucy's cancel student debt summit, right? When was that? That was like a month and change ago.
That was back in a few months back.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, everyone was saying pretty much the same things then. Was that you should just cancel it. It's you know, but I'm interested to get your take so far, Rob.
Yeah, if you think that the economy is doing well, which they have said that it is, it's not really, but they often would say that we can't forgive student loans because of the economy. You know, that's it's going to hurt the economy. Where we've argued that no, it would be an economic boon for all of these millennials and even, you know, younger Gen Xers and certainly Gen Z were completely unleashed to spend more money because they're not having to keep up with a couple $100 extra a month going towards these payments. So they say that the economy is doing well right now. These student loan payments have been frozen for what, 2 years now? You know, it's been about 2 years, I believe, maybe over 2 years. So of course that means that the rhetoric that they had before has fallen apart. In fact, it isn't the end of the world if we aren't in fact paying these back.
Yeah.
So, but even further than that, people are still not unleashed if they know that, you know, 2 months down the line or 4 months down the line, they're going to have to keep up with their payments. So a lot of times, rather than them taking that extra money, which is now freed up, and putting it into the economy, they're just saving it for loan payments that they expect in the future. So if you want the true economic stimulus that would be forgiving this forever, you have to forgive it forever. You can't keep kicking the can down the road. And secondly, I'd like to just I love that what AOC actually said, and I don't agree with her very often, but she's poignant here, saying that it's anxiety and fear of having these things kick back in is emotionally traumatizing for people, because they know that they eventually are going to have to, you know, deal with this financially somehow. So it never really unburdens them. And that's a kind of a traumatizing thing to do to people. She's right. She's right there. And I know that myself. Like, nothing takes the wind out of my sails more than getting a note from one of my, you know, private loan companies that now owns my debt for chiropractic school. And it says, oh, well, when your loans kick back in next month, we're going to need $5,000 a month for this next year. And I'm like, bro, I'm about to have a panic attack just because of that. And I always defer, forbear, or whatever. But still, it's this thing that I always feel like I have to deal with. And it's emotionally traumatizing, because I don't think I'll ever get out from under that stuff unless, you know, we hope that Joe Biden does something that he promised, you know, not that would fix all my loan debt, but let's say that he just did what he promised, $10,000. That would settle a lot of people up. It would really help a lot of people that don't have, you know, hundreds of thousands of student loan debts like I do. So, you know, kudos to AOC. The only caveat, or the problem I guess I have with her tweet, is that she didn't specifically call Joe Biden out and say the obvious solution, which is Joe Biden can use the Higher Education Act of 1965, Section 432A, to forgive all student loans, federal student loans. And once those get forgiven, private student loans would come shortly thereafter. So I wish she would just be a little more direct. She's right on substance, but, you know, calling out Joe Biden publicly and saying specifically how he could do it would be the correct tweet.
Well, to me, as we head towards midterms, you know, the strongly worded tweet will be, you know, out more in force.
Yeah.
You
They're
know,
already,
because
you can already see it.
they're looking for issues that people were willing to vote for them and their constituency, like, you know, their other allies to go with, and if it's safe enough for them to call out right now without calling out the actual administration, they're going to, you know. So like we're seeing that a lot with Bernie, with all of them right now, you know. But anyway, we have more of this. So let's go to friend of the show, Afeni, right? You want me to just play the clip and let it speak for itself?
All
right.
And we also support 80% of the Black households in America, solely or mainly. So when we're talking about cancellation of student loan debt, we're talking about radically thinking about what it looks like to put financial power back into Black people's hands. That generational tax that goes from mother to daughter, mother to son, we want that gone. So we're asking Joe Biden to pick up that pen, just like he picked up the pen and flicked it to sign the 90th on full crime bill, just like he picked that pen up and flicked it for the Hyde Amendment, just like he picked it up and flicked it to mass incarcerate all the Black and brown people in this fucking country. Then that means they can pick up the goddamn pen and fucking cancel the student loan debt.
Goddamn, girl. Oh, she kills.
Yeah, she's extremely powerful.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting that I think especially like Democrats are not going to say this, but I think like the squad like keeps saying, you know, oh, you should cancel student debt. You should cancel student debt. They never ever say that Joe Biden was the architect of why we cannot, like, you cannot declare student loan debt as part of bankruptcy. They never ever say that. So it's just like, you say a half truth as far as, yeah, he should cancel it, but he's the cause why people cannot get out of it. And I wish they would do that.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly right. And that's virtue signaling in a nutshell. If you're just going out there and saying student loan debt is bad and it should be forgiven, but you don't come up with like a solution or call someone out that can actually bring about what you're talking about, then you're just, you know, virtue signaling. And that's the most frustrating thing about the squad, man. That's all they do. They get paid $174,000 a year to do that, which works out, by the way, I did the math, that works out to like about $1 per virtue signaling tweet each one of them makes per year.
Yeah. I mean, and how much do you think they promote their own tweets anyway? Just to counteract that, like, you know, just to waste more money, you know? But,
yeah.
We got more to this, I think. Why does it always go back to
I
like
think that's
play it
it
again? That's it for this one? Cool.
I think that's it for that one.
But yeah, no, fucking just get rid of student debt already. Like, I don't get it. I don't get why we have to keep yelling the same things.
Even Republicans are on board for it. So it's one of those things where Republican voters and Democratic voters are all on board for it, especially younger people. The only people that seem to be against this are basically the companies that own private debt, which of course they're against because they know that they'll lose their grift if Biden forgives all the federal student loans. And then the elitists who, you know, they profit off of the industry as well. And they don't have this as a problem because, as Jay Buffont from RBN so eloquently said, rich people don't have student loan debt. So they don't care about that. And that's exactly who's making all of the laws and, you know, pulling all the levers.
Yeah.
Doesn't affect them personally. Never will.
I've never had a argument with a right-wing Republican or anyone that didn't agree that public funding of schools should be there, right? Like, you know,
you get the occasional like really old person that's like, well, I paid off my student debts, and I'm like, yeah, but you graduated in 1976 when going to school for 4 years cost like $400.
A summer's worth of like work, you know?
Yeah, it's not the same thing. Like if we had like a lot of these Scandinavian countries don't technically have like free college. It's just so unbelievably affordable that like you go for like a semester and all you have to pay for is like your textbooks.
Right.
or something. And if that were all that we were dealing with in this country, nobody would really be up in arms about it. But I graduated with $232,000 worth of student loan debt when I got my doctorate.
Yeah.
And I would have to work 2 lifetimes full time to even get close to paying that off. And I don't plan on living to be 200 years old.
Yeah. I mean, it's, you know, and I was always under the threshold where I couldn't afford assistance, right? You know, my parents made just enough to where, like, you know, they would have to fork that money out every time. And it's like, a lot of people can't continue to play that, like, game of being that close to the edge of shit where, you know, there's times where I couldn't have afforded to go, you know, depending on, like, what jobs looked like. So while that Germany is able to, if you can go over there, if you can afford to travel, right, is willing to, you know, fork out for your education themselves, right? Like, or there's a few foreign places now that have that sort of, like, thing in place, you know?
Yeah. I mean, Sabi talked about this on several streams, but, like,
yeah,
if you're able to go abroad for college, that's usually a cheaper option, because typically, you know, you're going for 3 years instead of 4. So that knocks out a year. But the only thing is, usually here, the first year is like trying to figure out what you want to do, versus, like, by the time you get to university, like overseas, you know what you're going to do. So that just kind of takes away, you can basically start, like, within your major of study where you want to go into.
right. And that's what I said about the UK system forever, was like, even their high school starts educating differently, because they're not trying to get you to some median level of education to send you off into the workforce. They're expecting you to also go to some form of specialized, like, schooling, whether that be vocational work or, you know, a classic university or college, right? They expect you to do those things, and then you don't have to do those, like, the things people hate doing anyway, all the romantic, like, lessons, right? You know, you don't have to go and do another set of chemistry and algebra and whatever. You've already done all that. You can just immediately specialize.
The beauty of being in the UK, like, I grew up, well, not as a teen, but, like, just left, you know, but by the time you hit, like, the equivalent of maybe, like, a sophomore in high school here, like, you're actually taking coursework towards what your interests are. So, you know, and obviously you have to take exams for those courses, you know, in light of, especially if you're looking to go into university over there. But you are given the opportunity to kind of figure out, like, oh, I'm good at this, or maybe I'm not so great at this. And that can help you kind of figure out, like, what you should be majoring. Here, you don't really fucking know what you want to do until you're maybe 2021. And even then, that's not necessarily sure. And by then, you're probably, like, in your 3rd year in college by that point. So, like,
when you get out of college,
so standardized to,
you don't have, like, any guarantee that you're going to get something in your field, like, no guarantee. And there's no information up front when you start your, you know, liberal arts major to even figure out what jobs you'd be able to apply for afterwards. Like, there's no you know, assistance with that at all from colleges, on top of tuition increase, book rental increase, dorm increase. Like, it's all you know, it's went up by hundreds of % in the last, like, you know, decade, let alone multiple decades, you know. So I find it crazy, greedy, and frankly just dumb that we're still even having to deal with it, you know. So
yeah, if Joe Biden really wanted the economy that he's talking about, one of the first things he would do is this, and it would be a slam dunk, because it's the easiest thing to do. You don't have to go through Congress. Do it yourself. You want to maintain the House and the Senate, forgive student loan debt. You have a much better chance. So pragmatically, it also makes sense. And if I may make a prediction, he's not going to do that. There's no way he's going to do it.
No way.
He would rather, you know, gaslight and tell you that the economy is booming and everything is back to normal than actually fix the economy and get us back to normal. So that's the world we live in.
I find it interesting that, like, places like Google and things like that now don't require degrees, right? They require you to understand a particular bit of knowledge that they have set in their, like, you know, paperwork, right? You have to be able to meet certain requirements. So even they're understanding the failures of the institutional education system, to where it's like they're not even looking at that anymore.
Here's the issue with this, and Rob, you know this well because you're in the medical field. Unfortunately, like, if you want to be a lawyer, if you want to be a doctor, if you want to be a teacher, more likely than not, you need a license in order to do that. And the only way you can do that is getting those college credits for the most part. And I shared this with Sabi like a couple of weeks ago. It's like, you know, because, and the idea is like, is college worth it? And for me as a teacher, I'm very mixed on it, because the reality is, you know, like, yeah, it's not worth it in the sense of you getting into debt. But on the other hand, you know, like, as especially being a person of color, you know, like, we need that. People say, well, I don't want to sound like very cliche, but we need that representation, like in these fields, especially, you know, so like, it's the idea, like, if the elite are able to afford to go to college, you know, and not have to worry about student debt and anything, or having these higher paying, well, I'm not saying higher paying jobs, but more like these levels of jobs versus like the working class going into some kind of vocation. Like, I'm not knocking anyone going into vocation work at all, but you will find that what could happen is the idea, like, the working class, which will usually maybe, you know, people of color who are lower income, are working these vocational jobs. And then you're having like the elite class having all these white collar jobs. So it's like a two-tier system right there. So, and I mean, as a teacher, you know, the majority of the teaching force, I think like 80%, over 80% right now, is like white, whereas over 50% is of color. So it's like a lot of students of color is having white teachers, and not to say that's a bad thing, but they're not necessarily having a teacher who looks like them, who's able to understand them and their culture and all that kind of stuff, which I do believe is important. So, you know, so I think especially as a person of color, you know, like, it's just to everyone's advantage that cancel student debt. And I mean, there is the conversations I hear on Twitter, well, that doesn't help, that doesn't, you know, canceling student debt is just a band-aid. Yeah, let's also talk about colleges too, if you want to bring in that discussion of how they rob students, you know, especially for these richer schools who are getting like endowments close to like small countries, who can probably do a lot more for their students in order to give out more scholarships, and so that more students have the opportunity to get the education that we need in order, you know, to be a viable citizen in this country. You know, so yeah, just Joe Biden, just cancel the debt. Stop.
Do it already. You know,
it's one of the easiest three. It's one of the easiest three things he can do.
Yeah.
There's a handful of things, but it's one of the easy. If you want to win re-election, it'd be probably the easiest thing for him to do. That would immediately help in a demographic where he is very But I mean, particularly he does very poorly with young people. This would help young people, and he would actually force them to the ballot box if he did it. You're right, but you're right. Legalization of marijuana is another one that would help, and it would, again, slam dunk. You want to win in the midterms, remove it as a Schedule I drug, effectively legalizing it nationwide. But again, nobody donates more to Joe Biden than Big Pharma. They're his number one donor, so he's not going to do that. And of course, he's in the pocket of all these other industries too, so he's not going to do it. He's just going to pretend and virtue signal